We humans, we speculating apes, have a simple process for dealing with the world. We observe and hypothesize. For example, if we see a hungry lion approaching, we might hypothesize that running is a good idea, especially if we're with a slower friend. If we're hungry and we see a lion approaching, we might hypothesize that killing and eating it would be a good idea. If we're really clever, we might hypothesize that tying a sharp stone on the end of a stick will make it easier to kill the lion. The problem is that such a primitive approach is limited, even dangerous, because it doesn't test what we think we know until it's too late. Science begins the same way. It observes and hypothesizes. The difference between standard human thinking and scientific thinking is that science says we have to test both our observations and our hypotheses. That approach has been an enormous benefit to humanity in general and America in particular. It's why you're watching videos on a computer instead of running from lions. It's why you have a longer life expectancy than your ancestors. It's why you have toys and tools that would look like magic to those people. And the reason you enjoy the benefits of modern science is because of farmers. We have a pretty good idea how primitive humans operated in the past. We have historical and archaeological evidence, and we have observations of uncontacted tribes that have survived into modern times. We began to leave that primitive lifestyle with the invention of agriculture, which had a number of profound effects on humanity. For one thing, it enabled the development of specialized labor. A farmer can grow more food than his family can eat, but he doesn't have time for much else. That left an opening for the rest of us, the middlemen. If a farmer is growing all the food I need to eat, I can weave rugs or make pottery or even build better farming tools and trade those things to the farmer for food. Agriculture enabled specialized labor, and specialized labor gave humanity something we hadn't seen before. It gave people time to think about things. That was when some people, freed from the necessity of running from lions or gathering food every day, began to systematically observe, classify, and record knowledge. The era of proto-science had begun. If you ever attended a school, you're probably thinking of the ancient Greeks right now. So am I. They weren't that great at science, but they laid the foundation for modern scientific thinking. So if you like that computer, thank a scientist, thank an ancient Greek, and thank a farmer. Without them, you'd still be finger painting on cave walls if you were alive at all. The era of proto-science lasted a long time. That's partly because we were held back by superstition and tradition, but also because we lacked data. We humans aren't that good at gathering data. We can see a limited range of electromagnetic radiation with regards to frequency and intensity. We can hear a limited range of sounds. We can't see things that are very small or very far away. In the 1600s, that situation began to improve with the invention of the telescope and the microscope. Suddenly, the scientists had access to more data. With a telescope, Galileo could see the rings of Saturn, something no human had seen before. With a microscope, Leeuwenhoek could see microorganisms that no human had seen before. The invention of the scope and other scientific instruments freed us from the limitations of human senses and perceptions. It gave us a flood of objective data. This flood of data opened our eyes to a much richer and more complicated world than anyone had suspected. It began giving us the tools we needed to test our observations and hypotheses. Something else happened about this time that gave a boost to the development of science, and that thing was a hillbilly rebellion in the outlands. America and modern science are twins. This nation began taking shape in the 1600s, about the same time the invention of the scope began shaping science. By the time we were ready to declare our independence, America was already establishing its own scientific tradition, and that tradition helped this nation grow. The rugged frontiersman is certainly a valid part of Americana, but so is the scientist. America is not just the land of Davy Crockett, it's the land of Benjamin Franklin. It's not just the land of the tobacco plantation and the cattle drive, it's also the land of the university and the research laboratory. While much of the important scientific work through the 1800s and early 1900s was done in Europe, America played a growing part. Just as science helped America become strong, America helped modern science develop. The invention of the telescope and microscope gave scientists access to previously unobtainable data. Lots of data. Lots and lots and lots of data. The invention of modern computing gave scientists another tool they needed to advance human knowledge, a way to manage and analyze all the data they were collecting. Even though computers haven't caught up with the human mind in some respects, they make the process of analyzing data much easier. Some data analysis tasks that might have taken a human scientist a lifetime to accomplish can be done by a computer in days or even hours. Notice how knowledge feeds on knowledge. The invention of agriculture enabled the development of science. Science makes agriculture work better. Science enabled the development of the computer. Computers make science work better. And that brings us to today. Like almost every other human endeavor, modern science has deep historical roots, but it's grown far beyond those roots. Science isn't just a bunch of eggheads sitting in a lab sniffing chemicals. It's a whole range of professions whose job is to advance human knowledge. This isn't an abstract pursuit. For example, a lot of my conservative compadres are fond of drilling for oil. Did you ever wonder how the oil companies know where to drill? They know where to drill because of the knowledge that scientists have gathered. Geology, chemistry, paleontology, these are just some of the sciences that inform the search for oil. A thinking conservative understands the value of increased knowledge because a thinking conservative knows a little history. He knows that ignorance has never been a virtue. The problem for a 21st century conservative is that even though modern technology makes it easier to cure ignorance, the wealth of knowledge we have today means there's a lot more ignorance to cure. If you were born in the ancient world, you weren't that ignorant because there wasn't that much to know. If you're born in the modern world, you're born very ignorant because there's a lot more to know. While amateurs can and still do contribute to scientific advancement, most scientific work these days requires extensive education, training, and experience. It can also require some expensive tools. An amateur astronomer can grind his own lenses and mirrors, but he's not going to come close to the capabilities of the Hubble Space Telescope. The scientists are going places where it's not easy for the rest of us to follow. It's not just the equipment that holds us back. Scientific thinking doesn't come naturally to humans, and most of us don't have the time to develop the skill. Most of us are still proud of our folksy, run-from-the-line level of common sense. But common sense didn't split the atom or invent the MRI machine. The usefulness of common sense is limited to common situations. A lot of my conservative compadres probably won't like hearing that. But conservatism doesn't ask us to like reality, it demands that we face it. The reality is that science has left most of us in the intellectual dust, and that raises an important question for a 21st century conservative. How do we trust the scientists if we don't understand them?